Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 143 of Exploring the Lord of the Rings, and we are going to get to Gandalf's part of the council at last. Still less than halfway through, of course, the council, but that's okay. We are finally coming to the place. Gandalf is being given the position of honor. We're going to be told by Elrond and allowed to go last, which means a little before halfway through the chapter. Anyway, so let's jump fairly quickly back into this. Just wanted to give a quick reminder to folks. Don't forget, there's still a couple weeks left to register for our first month of our Signum Path program. We have, of course, our July and August classes open for registration as well, but you can still get in to June classes in these next 2 weeks here. So just wanted to draw your attention to that, path.signumuniversity.org for our homepage there. All right. Let us jump back into the text here. Yeah, Mike calls Gandalf the only person who likes the sound of his own voice more than Bilbo does. Yeah, true enough. True enough. Okay. All right. So we ended last time with Galdor's sort of interruption, right? Galdor overhearing Bilbo and calling out aloud, right? You speak for me also. Although it seemed to be, we were kind of talking about the extent to which his segue is a non sequitur, right? In that he says, you know, he's just overheard Frodo saying that he wished to hear a lot more from Gandalf, and then he responds by saying, you speak for me also, and then doesn't say anything explicitly about Gandalf. So one of the things that we were sort of thinking about in response to that observation last time was that Galdor, it seems to be a sort of invitation to Gandalf, perhaps slightly more subtle and less direct than Frodo simply saying, I would like to hear a good deal more from Gandalf, right? You know, he calls for the proofs, right? May we not hear the proofs that the halflings' trove is indeed the great ring of long debate. And what of Saruman, right? He is learned in the lore of the rings, and yet he is not among us. What is his counsel if he knows the things that we have heard? So what are the proofs that this ring is in fact the ring of power? And can we get the opinion of an actual expert, please? We have, you know, our sort of resident within the White Council, right, expert on the rings of power. What is his input into this question? An obviously very good question. In the end, after further thought, I've come back around to thinking that Galdor's segue is actually pretty good. That he probably is teeing it up pretty well for Elrond here, I think, Gilgunthir. And perhaps it's, I won't go so far as to call him a plant, but I do think that he is kind of pushing things in this direction. Another thing that I can't help but notice is how closely he is actually echoing what Boromir said, right? Boromir, you know, talks about the bright ring, right, that he has seen in the halfling's hand. You know, how do we know that this was Isildur's ring? Galdor is essentially still saying the same thing and pointing out politely, right, quite politely and quite indirectly, that has not been proven yet. Okay, so in response to Boromir's question, how do we know that this ring, you know, this bright ring, this bright, attractive, really desirable looking ring that this halfling has held up is, you know, how do we know it's the ring of power? The only response to that we've gotten is Bilbo's story about how he found it in the Misty Mountains, and then Frodo's story about how he kept the ring and how he came and was being pursued by the Black Riders, right? That is to say, the answer hasn't been given yet. That's whatever else it might be. The accounts of Bilbo and Frodo certainly cannot add up to a proof, anything like a proof, that this ring is the ring that Isildur lost, right? So Galdor is, I think, rather gently pushing on the fact that this, although this is very interesting material, right, that these two halflings have given us, this has not answered the question, right? And we still really do need to know what reasons are there for us to believe. He's not saying it skeptically, right? He's being very politic about this. He's being diplomatic. He's not calling anybody out on the carpet here. In fact, there's even a kind of humility in that first sentence, right? The wise may have good reason to believe the halfling's trove is indeed the great ring of long debate, unlikely though that may seem to those who know less, right? It's like, we ignorant folks, we just it seems unlikely. It's probably just us, right? I am sure the wise. So he's not, criticizing Elrond or Gandalf or anybody else, right? He's not being aggressive. He's just saying, I'm sure this makes sense to you guys, but I trust that we're getting to the part of the meeting where you share that information with us, right? And again, that seems to me a fairly gentle way to do it. But again, I would point out that he is doing nothing more than seconding, essentially, Boromir's testimony, or Boromir's question, right, that led to this in the first place. And his Saruman question seems to me, I don't see any reason to believe that his Saruman question isn't 100% genuine, right? In fact, it seems very likely that what he's essentially, that one of the things, what is his counsel? Yet he is not among us, he says. Again, I don't necessarily read that as a rebuke of Elrond or anything like that, and yet there's question there. There's a slight, I don't want to say challenge, but question, at least, right? We all know who's the expert on this subject, right? I'd have kind of expected you, Elrond, to include, didn't you think to invite Saruman the White? I mean, if you knew we were going to have a Ring of Power related council here, right? If you suspected that, this situation was going to arise, which was going to call for the most momentous decision, shouldn't we have not only the person who is actually the leader of the Council of the Wise, but also the foremost expert on the thing in question? I mean, that seems pretty obvious, like a no-brainer, right? And so I again think that Galdor, especially seeing how polite and indirect he's being in the first part of his speech, I expect he's being polite and indirect in the second part as well. And he's saying quite neutrally, it seems odd, right, that Saruman should not be here. How does that come to be, Elrond? Why is it that Saruman is not here? It's like he assumes there must be some story behind that. And of course, he's entirely correct that there is a story about that. Now, Tessa, it's certainly true. He didn't know he was going to have a council, right? You can't really, when you look at the whole thing, you can't really blame Elrond for that. And I'm sure that Galdor would be reasonable about that as well. But nevertheless, it's still an interesting question, right? And that's why I think he then follows it up by saying, what is his counsel if he knows the things that we've... someone at least reached out to him, right? He's got to be in the loop here, right? Right? Probably. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Goganthier says, if you're going to have people summoned by an undefined, unspecified purpose, you would normally expect Saruman to be the first to get that call. Yeah, absolutely, right? Someone's out there sending dream poems, right? Summoning them to Rivendell. Surely Saruman made that list, right? You've got to think. Yeah. Exactly, as JJ says, they were called, though Elrond is not the one that called them. So whoever did the calling left Saruman off the invite list for some reason. Exactly, yeah. Exactly, Ambrosius. Ulmo didn't send Saruman the link for this particular Zoom meeting. Absolutely correct. So no, Tybert, absolutely, Saruman was not a traveling wizard like Gandalf. You know just where to find Saruman at almost any time, right? Of course, in his very fixed location down there in Isengard. Now, again, I'm not actually saying that I think that Galdor is going to be critical, right, of the fact that he wasn't invited. You know, the Saruman wasn't invited. Because, again, like, he's going to understand that nobody called this meeting, right, that this was relatively spontaneous. But still, surely he must have been consulted with. Elrond's response. The question... Oh, sorry, hang on a second. Before I get to Elrond's response, I wanted to fulfill our promise, only just briefly, though, to talk about the word trove. We missed the word trove. The halfling's trove is indeed a great ring of long debate. Flamifer talked about this on his forum post about it, and he's perfectly correct. The word trove comes from... It means something that you find, right? Like a find. So a treasure trove is technically treasure that has been discovered, happened across by people. So, you know, when you're like, plowing your field and you come up with a bunch of unknown Anglo-Saxon gold that was buried there centuries before, like happens in England occasionally, that's a treasure trove. Okay? Exactly. It's related to French trouve. Exactly. That's it, Chris. So, so Galdor is being quite correct, quite technically correct, right? When that happens, when he uses that word, Bilbo has just told the story about how he found it, right? So the ring is indeed the trove of Bilbo. It's Bilbo's trove, not anybody else's trove, right? But it's Bilbo's trove. So that is, he is spot on in his usage of that word. And you've got to know that Tolkien enjoys that kind of precision, knowing exactly what that word is supposed to convey, right? It does not mean a hoard, right? It does not mean, it just means treasure that has been found. Interesting that he kind of calls it that, right? That is not, it's not just because it's correct. By calling it the halfling's trove, he's emphasizing that Bilbo found it, right? This ring that Bilbo found would be one way of paraphrasing what he calls it, right? By calling it the halfling's trove. And of course, in the context of his sentence, right, the wise may have good reason to believe that the halfling's trove is indeed, right? The wise may have good reason to believe that this ring, this hobbit randomly picked up in the middle of the Misty Mountains, does happen to be Sauron's one ring of power, which was just lying there, right, on the ground. Unlikely though that may seem to those of us who know less. It's hard to blame people for thinking that unlikely, right? Now you're right, Tony, he's not saying that he stole it, right? He is certainly not perpetuating the name of thief that was put upon Bilbo by Gollum, of course. That is certainly true. But again, I think his emphasis is on, he is, again, rather gently pointing to the need for proofs still. Okay, all right, fine. Bilbo found it, right? And this ring that's here is the ring that Bilbo found in the Misty Mountains. Great. What does that prove, right? Why on earth should we think that what are the odds? What are the odds that this halfling in the dark, this like random guy, randomly crawling around in a tunnel in the dark, puts his hand on a ring which turns out to be Sauron's ring of power? I mean, come on, right? That's it takes a lot of believing, right? Anyway, that's complicated. Now, I don't think, a couple of you are asking, Edith and Gogonthir, and Flamifer was talking about this a good deal in his post as well. Does his use of the word trove have any relevance to the question of Bilbo's right to ownership? I don't think so. I don't think that that's what Galdor is getting at here at all. I don't think he's interested in that question. To Galdor, surely it's totally irrelevant of like, what is Bilbo's legal right to like claim the thing, right? That's not even on the table. All that's on the table is the provenance of this ring. Where did it come from? And what reason do we have to believe that this ring that you put your hand on in the dark happens to be Sauron's ring of power, right? So whether or not finding it and it's being a trove gives him any kind of legal ownership of it, or whether he should return it to Gollum or whatever else, or, whether the government could claim it or whatever, I don't think anybody... Well, okay, I think Bilbo cares about that, perhaps. And I know Gollum cares about that. But I certainly don't think Galdor from the Havens cares about that at all. So I think that his emphasis, his use of the word trove, is just designed to remind us we're talking about a thing Bilbo literally picked up off the ground, right? Why should you think? Why should we? Please tell me why we should think that this is Sauron's own ring. And exactly, Brandon, if it is the ring, the ownership is moot. It's Sauron's. Exactly. I mean, certainly to Galdor. And not to mention the fact that Bilbo doesn't even have it anymore, right? So it's not even about, it's like, yeah, somebody launching into a debate about like the legal right to keep it of the person who used to have it but doesn't even anymore. Like, that is like 2 or 3 levels of irrelevant to Galdor, certainly at this point. But yeah, Marielle, I do tend to agree that the idea of the government claiming it does seem to be a relatively modern thing. Yeah, I don't know. Exactly, Sheridan. I would think that Feanor's claim to the Silmaril, one of the things you can see in the Oath of Feanor, right, is that he is putting in an explicit clauses against the finders, keepers, losers, weepers premise, right? One of the ways in which you could paraphrase some of the elements of the Oath of Feanor is it is the finder, not the loser, who's going to be made to weep, if you follow my meaning, right? I don't care where you get it or how you get it, or no matter what circumstances, if it comes to, it's still mine, right? And I still claim it. And he's aggressive about that. Feanor is, right? Enough to lead you to think that he is anticipating other people saying they might have reason to claim it for their own. But anyway, yeah, and he does name names, Tony. Absolutely. Anyway, the point is, no one's worried about this right now, again, except perhaps, maybe, privately, and not even in the forefront of his mind, Bilbo, right? What we care about is this really Sauron's ring? And also, of course, what about Saruman? So, Elrond's response. The questions you ask, Galdor, are bound together. I had not overlooked them, and they shall be answered. But these things it is the part of Gandalf to make clear, and I call upon him last, for it is the place of honor, and in all this matter he has been the chief. Okay, Elrond says, I've not overlooked this, right? He says to Galdor, Galdor, you're jumping the gun on my agenda, right? That was next in line, but you see how I keep getting interrupted by Gondorian semi-princes and halflings, right? Impatient for lunch. So we're getting there, right? In fact, we are right now getting there. There are a few things that jump out at me here. These things, it is the part of Gandalf to make clear. Make clear is one of the first things that I find interesting there. It's not the part of Gandalf to tell. It's the part of Gandalf to make clear. He is going to put... Gandalf isn't just going to tell the stories. He's not just going to fill the gaps. Gandalf is going to make everything clear, right? And that, I think, is interesting. And yeah, Corey, I agree. Elrond's answer suggests that Galdor's questions aren't obviously directed to Gandalf, right? Elrond presents this as if he is like rerouting the questions to Gandalf, essentially. Anyway, so remember that making things clear, let's just keep in mind before Gandalf speaks, that making things clear, spelling everything out, putting everything together, is going to be Gandalf's job, right? And so that's an important piece of context, which Elrond seems to be giving us here. Another thing that really jumps out at me here is the fact that he says your questions are bound together. And that's not necessarily obvious. Indeed, even in retrospect, that is, even with the knowledge of someone who's read the book before, it's not even 100% obvious how those questions are bound together. How do you know this is Sauron's ring, and what does Saruman have to say about this, right? There's a connection, but I'm not sure even if I would have called them bound together in this, apart from the fact that they're bound together in that Gandalf is going to answer them both, right? So they have the both, the sort of the two, like the answers to both questions. Arahad, I agree. Gandalf is about to put together all the different pieces to the puzzle that everyone else has only a part of. Yes, exactly. Well, I agree, Fourth Dauntless, that Saruman's lust for the ring is pretty good evidence, though it's evidence about the nature of the ring, but doesn't necessarily tell us anything about this ring in particular, necessarily. Anyway, Saruman is going to come up. But again, it's another thing that I want to be thinking about as we're reading Gandalf's answers, and to be thinking about how, indeed, are Galdor's two questions bound together in this sense. And finally, the little introduction that he gives for Gandalf. He's not introducing him in the sense of like, I now present you with Gandalf the Grey. Let me tell you who he is. But he's not giving a bio of Gandalf here. But he does go out of his way to emphasize, in all this matter, he has been the chief. Elrond points to Gandalf as the primary mover of events at this point. He's the first one to do this, right? I mean, to Frodo, right, from our Shire-based perspective, through which we have generally seen the story so far to this point, Gandalf, of course, has always been a big deal. And it's very interesting to learn here that everybody else thinks so too. That's not necessarily a given, right? Especially in the context of what Galdor was just saying, that like Gandalf not actually the most qualified person to be addressing this issue, right? Saruman is really the one that we should be getting, right? Gandalf is like a backup option at best. Elrond also seems to, I think, perhaps be preparing things. Seems to be preparing things for what he's going to say about Saruman as well, right? Gandalf is certainly not the fallback option. Aurea Entuleva, wonderful name, says, would Gandalf have spoken with Elrond about Saruman before the council? I'm sure of it. I don't think that, I mean, Gandalf has been there for days. I don't think that he didn't tell Elrond already. So I'm sure that Elrond already knows about Saruman. Yeah, exactly. Rinru says that to Galdor, Gandalf's on the end of the bench saying, put me in, coach. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of reasons why many people would not necessarily believe in Gandalf, right? Take Gandalf as seriously. Elrond is going pretty far out of his way to make a big deal out of Gandalf here, almost as if there are people here who need to know that, right? Who need to be reminded that Gandalf is kind of a big deal. So I think that that's worth remembering here. And again, Galdor's words about Saruman seem a kind of reminder of that. Yeah, JJ says, thinking of The Hobbit, Bjorn hasn't even heard of Gandalf and doesn't think much of him just from the wizard title alone. Yeah, I agree. Although, even though wizards are a bigger deal already at this point in the Fellowship of the Ring than they were in The Hobbit, he's clearly not automatically at the same level that, as Elrond. Absolutely. And yes, Gilgonthir, you're right. Gandalf doesn't really look regal in his appearance. Now, if you have eyes to see, you can see that he's still fairly impressive. Remember his description at the dinner table, that wonderful Glorfindel, Elrond, Gandalf seating, right, that we got there at the end, the descriptions of the three of them, which showed that Gandalf is a little bit of a big deal. But again, that's presumably Frodo's point of view, right, who is seeing his old friend in this new context for the first time. And it's almost like, I don't remember if we even talked about this at the time, but it seems to me perhaps one of the undertones of that entire paragraph, right, is Frodo as narrator saying, and it was in this moment that I realized that, the pipe-smoking vagabond wizard who had been checking in on my family for a couple generations was actually a really, but there he is, sitting at the table at the right hand of Glorfindel's at his right hand, at the left hand of Elrond. It's a big deal, right? Yeah, and I agree, Tony, the White Council wouldn't be a public thing. The other people on the White Galadriel is under no illusions about Gandalf being important. That does not necessarily mean that others are going to afford him the kind of respect that they would to Saruman. Right? Yeah. Interesting, Arahad. Great question. Why does Elrond call him Gandalf instead of Mithrandir? I think, well, let's see. There are several, they are all speaking Westron, so it's possible that he's just kind of using that mode. This is what Gandalf is called in the North, Angrist, yeah. So yes, I would think that shifting to calling him Mithrandir would have been like a little bit of a little bit of a shift, right, for Elrond. He would have been going out of his way to give his elvish name, which doubtless, would make sense when he's speaking to Galdor. But yeah, Tony, I agree. Even the dwarves know him by the name of Gandalf. And of course, out of courtesy to the hobbits as well, who clearly know him as Gandalf. And it's not like the elves, like Galdor, is going to be like, what? Who? He surely knows that Mithrandir is also called Gandalf. So, yeah, Gilgonthir, that was my very first impulse, was to say that Elrond is kind of keeping it at the, he's basically accommodating this conversation for the hobbits, because I think perhaps Elrond already knows that he isn't the most important person in this room. Gandalf isn't the most important person in this room. Ultimately, Frodo is going to be the most important person in this room, right? The place of honor might be given to Gandalf, but the most important role is going to be played by Frodo. And so is for that reason, is he already kind of targeting, in a sense, the hobbits in this way? It's also, Tony, it's also possible that we have the Hobbit narrator using the name Gandalf. But see, of course, the Hobbit narrator is going to be faithfully rendering the name Mithrandir when it's used in other contexts, right? In order to kind of convey that sense, like down in Minas Tirith and in Lothlorien. And yes, you are correct. Those of you who are suspecting that the name Mithrandir didn't really exist yet, that is correct. He was only called Gandalf to this point. But that doesn't stop Tolkien from going back and changing this after the fact. He did, as we saw with the Arwen passages, right, go back and make changes in order to reconcile things. So if he had decided that all elves called him Mithrandir all the time, he'd have put that in, right? He had plenty of time to do that. So I don't think the fact that yes, it's true that when he had originally written this, but again, remember, when we say originally written this, he wrote the Council of Elrond like 4 times, okay? And in wildly different periods of the composition of the text, so it's not quite as linear as that, really. Especially up to and including the Council of Elrond, let me say. We get... the early parts of the story that we've already passed through are the ones that he did most often, right? Where sort of the waves of the sea, right? Which is what I always kind of imagine as Tolkien's composition, right? Are sort of coming up and receding and coming up and receding. And as he gets to a point and starts again and gets to the same point again and goes back and starts again. He got up to Rivendell at least 5 times. He got through the council a couple times, fewer times than he did the material leading up to it. Then another point of the high cresting wave was at Moria. But again, he had lots of occasions of going back and revising and reworking things. So, as I say, not really. I get that it was never included doesn't mean that it can only be explained by the fact that he hadn't thought of it yet. Okay, good. Yes, and as Turambar points out, that even Galadriel is going to call him Gandalf. He will be referred to as Mithrandir there, but Galadriel is going to call him Gandalf when she talks about him. So it is clear that it's not like the elves don't know any other name or don't care about any other name. All right. Milthaliel, yeah, I don't know, this, it might not be your thing, but if you're really interested if you're a writer and really interested in the writing process, the History of the Lord of the Rings, volumes 6, 7, and 8, and the first half of 9, of the History of Middle-earth series is fascinating to read. And I did Mythgard Academy's classes on all of those. So if you want, you can read through and even follow along with our discussions on our YouTube channel. It's really, I found it amazing to dig through that and sort of watch the stories emerge. I feel like I've learned an enormous amount, not only about Tolkien, but just kind of about the creative process. It was really fascinating. Anyway, sorry, just a little plug there. But I know a lot of people don't get that far in the history of Middle-earth, so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Okay. Cool. Oh, neat. Ara had just been listening to the Mythgard Academy stuff. You just finished the Boethius class today? Awesome. I loved the Boethius class. So glad that people elected Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. Possibly the most surprising thing that was ever elected there. Anyway, okay. All right. Okay, so ending with, of all this matter, he has been the chief, right? Gandalf's introduction by Elrond. It's not that I think that there are going to be some people here who don't take him seriously, but there will be probably many people in here who will not realize the significance of Gandalf, right? Even the dwarves. You think about the interactions between Gandalf and the dwarves in The Hobbit. He's like a professional, right? Who can be sort of like hired on for a job, as it were. That he would be, the chief of all of these things is not necessarily something people would expect. Good. Let's keep going. Some Galdor, said Gandalf, would think the tidings of Glóin and the pursuit of Frodo proof enough that the halfling's trove is a thing of great worth to the enemy. Yet it is a ring. What then? The 9 the Nazgul keep. The 7 are taken or destroyed. At this Glóin stirred, but did not speak. The 3 we know of. What then is this one he desires so much? There is indeed a wide waste of time between the river and the mountain, between the loss and the finding, but the gap in the knowledge of the wise has been filled at last, yet too slowly, for the enemy has been close behind, closer even than I feared. And well is it that not until this year, this very summer as it seems, did he learn the full truth. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, Tessa says, I thought the 9 were held by Sauron, not the Nazgul. Tolkien's inconsistent on that point, actually. Gandalf here says the Nazgul keep the 9. And that makes sense to me. Of the two things, that Sauron holds the 9, and that the ringwraiths are still wearing them, of those two, that the ringwraiths are still wearing them, again, to me, sort of makes the most sense. Anyway, notice that there are two things that happen here, right? First thing that he does, the very first thing that he does, is refer back to Glóin's story, which many people might have overlooked the relevance of. No one has brought that up. I wonder if even Glóin is thinking of it as evidentiary in relationship to this question about the ring, Bilbo's ring, right? So this halfling found a ring in the Misty Mountains. How do we know that this is Sauron's ring? And the first thing Gandalf says is, remember, Sauron sent for it, right? Remember what Sauron offered for this least of rings, right? This trifle that Sauron fancies? Gandalf is right to say, we can be sure that this ring means something to Sauron, right? He would not do that. He would not be, opening up diplomatic channels with Erebor in order to... Yeah, exactly. He offers the remaining 7 and Moria returned to them. I mean, that's what he offers them in exchange for this ring, right? It's a big deal. And I think Gandalf is right to draw attention to this, right? We do have reason to believe, external reason, not just, you don't have to take our word for it, right? Look at what has happened. Look at Sauron's own actions. And that's the other second thing that he says, the tidings of Glóin and the pursuit of Frodo. Look at what Sauron himself has done, right? Sauron is seeking for the ring and has made these enormously lavish offers, which he's probably not going to keep, everybody knows, right? But still, I mean, he's putting on the diplomatic pressure to get this ring back. And secondly, he sent the Nazgul, all 9 of them, right? The 9 Nazgul have gone out to the Shire on the other side of the continent in order to pursue that ring of Bilbo's, right? So, yeah, it's pretty clear that this ring is very important to Sauron. So these things are proof enough that the halfling's trove is a thing of great worth to the enemy. So without even talking about its provenance, without even talking about how it came to be there, we don't need to know, right? One thing we know for sure, without any other proofs, is that Sauron wants that ring really, really badly, right? Now, Cosmic, you're right. Sauron could have bad intelligence on that, right? Sauron could be wrong. He could be mistaken. But still, it's interesting evidence, right? Yet it is a ring. What then? The 9 the Nazgul keep, the 7 are taken or destroyed, the 3 we know of. What then is this one that he desires so much? Gandalf's second move. So his first move is to emphasize that other piece, that other body of evidence that we have, right? To do some commentary on Frodo's story. Let me draw your attention to this really important fact, right? Why would he send the ringwraiths to do this job, right? Why was this so important to him that he would send his most powerful? And notice how this connects even with Boromir's statement, right? Why did Boromir leave again? Why are they desperate in Gondor? Oh yeah, because the ringwraiths came, right? The Lord, the Black Rider came into the battle and they knew they couldn't stand against him, right? There was no way that they were going to be able to hold back the forces. Oh, and then they left, right? So those same riders, which made the situation for the Gondorian armies almost hopeless, so hopeless that their captain general himself left, right, in order to pursue the one desperate hope that might enable them to gain something, some insight, some weapon, something or other that might help them stand against the enemy, right? He's left. He went to the Shire instead. So this is good news for Boromir, I guess. Hey, Boromir, so you're probably going to find Minas Tirith still standing when you get back, because that Black Rider you've been afraid of is here, right? In fact, you might have passed him on the road, actually. Okay. So, right. Lincoln says this is Gandalf's chance to play Hercule Poirot and tie all the seemingly disconnected threads together in a single unified narrative. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what he's doing here. And Music Alice is absolutely right, except instead of Poirot's mustaches, it's Gandalf's eyebrows, right? Yeah, exactly. But Music, I'm hoping this doesn't mean that Gandalf is waxing his eyebrows, because that's just disturbing. But anyway. Okay, so anyway, Gandalf's approach here is a sort of process of elimination, right? In fact, you may remember, we talked about this quite a bit back in Chapter 2. Right around the time when we started going sentence by sentence through the whole book, actually, one of the things that a lot of people often struggle with is, why didn't Gandalf figure this out sooner, right? And almost everybody that I have ever heard talk about this, right? Almost everybody I've ever heard making this objection or complaint or asking this question follows exactly Gandalf's own lead here, right? Dude, simple process of elimination, right? There aren't that many rings, and all the rest of them are accounted for. So there's this free-floating ring of power, right, in the field, and come on, like, count on your fingers, dude. How long does it take you to figure? Why does it take Gandalf 60 years more, right? Arguably 77 years to figure out that this was the One Ring. Couldn't he have done that math that he just did before, right? So it's interesting that Gandalf himself starts with this whole idea, right? What then is this One Ring that he desires so much? I will just say to keep in mind the two questions to keep in mind a couple things that I emphasized back in Chapter 2, right? Thing number one, don't forget that lots of people, most everybody knows less than we do. It might be super obvious to us. It's not going to be super obvious to everybody else. Not everybody even knows all the lore of the rings. Like, not even everybody is going to know how many rings all of them are, right? So that lots of people don't realize this. And secondly, keep in mind that, well, in a sense, the very unlikeliness that Galdor is speaking of kind of plays into this here, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good. As Turambar says, nobody except Sauron can tell quite how accounted for the other rings are. Yeah, there's still some mystery there. Exactly. There's still some mystery there. And there were other lesser rings, Argent. Exactly. It's not yet 100% certain that this is necessarily one of the great rings. So there are definitely other options for Gandalf, but notice he's not giving those options, right? Because you'll notice, why is Gandalf skipping a step there? Why isn't he entertaining the possibility that it might be a lesser, that it might possibly be one of the lesser rings? And the answer is because of the previous evidence he's already pointed to. If this were just one of the minor rings, one of the lesser rings, would Sauron be offering kingdoms in exchange for it? Would he be extracting the ring wraiths right at their moment of victory, of apparent victory, right? He could have crushed Minas Tirith within a month, presumably, right? After the defeat that they had received. If he had pressed on, but no, instead, he packs them off across the continent to the north. The ring wraiths, that is, not Gondor. That's a big deal, right? Sauron's actions show that he prioritizes this above anything, even above the defeat of Gondor, his ancient foe. It's more important than that, right? You could say it's more important than Moria, which is his source of mithril, which he apparently values. But I don't put much stock in that because, of course, to say that he would be willing to give that up would be to believe that he was actually going to follow through on his promise to the dwarves, which I don't believe. So I don't think that that Moria was in any real danger of changing hands there just because he offered it, right? Okay. So, again, in theory, it could be one of the lesser rings. But when you combine these two things, it's a ring. It's clearly a magical ring. Yet it is a ring, right? And we know there's a limited number of magical rings, even counting the lesser rings, right? But Sauron is not going to be acting like this in pursuit of one of the lesser rings. Yeah. Yeah. Trifle says, I think he'd give them Moria, but he's not going to remove the Balrog first. Yeah, exactly. A little kind of booby prize there. Yeah. Okay. And then he adds, there is indeed a wide waste of time between the river and the mountain, between the loss and the finding. I totally acknowledge that there's a serious question of provenance here, right? There's not only a space of distance, right? Which, I mean, it's in the area, but it's not right in the area, right? And also of time. I mean, 3,000 years went by between when the ring was lost by Saruman and when Bilbo finds it, right, in the tunnel. Yeah. Oh, cool. Right. So, yeah, Tessa, Nazgul is a black speech word. Exactly. Nazgul, which means literally ring wraith. Why is he throwing around that word, Nazgul? Well, I don't know why. Exactly. Shock factor musical. That's kind of the direction I'm thinking. Well, JJ, it's possible that it's a borrowed word, like Musical was just suggesting. It started as black speech, but other languages have just adopted it as a proper title. Right. Yeah, Musical. Nazgul are exactly like croissants in that way. Maybe. Right. I like that connection. How is a Nazgul like a croissant? Yeah. Right, Fourth Dauntless is wondering if, well, but even if Ghoul does have a Sindarin root as well, Nazg is, I mean, that's black speech. I don't think we can get around that. Let's say this. I know what you guys are thinking about. What you guys are thinking about is when Gandalf is going to get in trouble for using the black speech later on. And so, Tessa, you're thinking, why don't all the elves blanch and throw up their hands and start having fits now when he's just said a black speech word, right? So he just used the black speech and nobody's reacting like the knights who say "ni," right? So why not? If the black speech has never been heard before, I think we'll see that more clearly when we get there. And what I think, we've talked about a similar thing like this before. I was just talking about this with Rinrus, with Steve and Trish this past week. We were recording an episode of their wonderful podcast, The Time That Is Given Us. And we were talking about how Sauron, concerning the name of Sauron, we were talking about the Dell under Weathertop. And Frodo gets cut off before he can say the word Mordor, right? And Aragorn's like, don't say that. Let's not talk about that, right? And then he sings the Song of Beren and Luthien, and then in his prose recap afterwards, he goes out of his way, way out of his way, to say of whom Sauron of Mordor was only a servant, right? He did not have to say either Sauron or Mordor there. He was talking about something else entirely, right? But for a little context, he throws out exactly the names that he had just said that they shouldn't say, right? My point is, in that scene, I think it's fairly clear that it's not just about the magic words, right? It's not like don't say his name lest he appear or something. And we talked about this, right? There's more to it. There's more to all of those things than simply don't say the forbidden word. And I think that that's true here. I think that what we will see when we get to the moment when all the elves freak out when Gandalf uses the black speech later, he's doing more than just using a word that is from the black speech. And I don't think that the elves blanch and twitch every time you say a word like Nazgul, right? I don't think that is what happens. I don't think that elves are as sensitive as that. I think that what is happening later on in this chapter when Gandalf does that is a much bigger deal. But we'll see that then. Okay. Okay, what then is this one? All right. Wide waste of time. That's where I was getting. Between the loss and the finding. So exactly as Fred Rock Paper said on the Twitch chat there, the two locations are 300 miles and 3,000 years removed. Exactly. But the gap in the knowledge of the wise has been filled at last, yet too slowly. For the enemy has been close behind, closer even than I feared, and well it is that not until this year, this very summer as it seems, did he learn the full truth. Sauron has figured this out, and we are very lucky that he only figured it out just now. Had he figured this out sooner, we would have been in huge trouble. But so we figured it out too slowly. The only fortunate thing is that Sauron was even slower than we were, right? Yeah. He acknowledges, and he's going to talk about this more in a minute. He acknowledges that it took them too long, to figure it out, right? We should have figured this out sooner. It would have been better had we figured this out sooner. WKU says, if Sauron found this out before, we'd all be using the Black Speech right now. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The enemy has been close behind, closer even than I feared. He learned the full truth this very summer, so just months ago, he learned the truth. Keep in mind here, what does this show us? What kind of context? This is Gandalf's opening. We've been looking at the rhetoric employed by a lot of the different speakers here. What is Gandalf establishing? What is he communicating here? The first, if these two paragraphs are sort of his preamble, right? He both begins and ends it with emphasizing Sauron's actions, right? His immediate response to Galdor's question. How do we know this is the ring? One option is we could sit down and we could contemplate all the pros and cons and the advantages and disadvantages of different theories for and against the idea that this is Sauron's ring. We could totally do that, right? But let's keep in mind, the important thing here, Sauron believes this, and Sauron is acting, right? Sauron has just learned the truth. In other words, we've got no time, right? This is really urgent. And it is clear from... So again, basically, if your best hope is that Sauron happens to be wrong, like, seriously? That's what you want to gamble on? Maybe Sauron doesn't know what he's talking about? Maybe that's why it's okay? Yeah. Fourth Dauntless, I think that's a good summary. Fourth Dauntless says, we are in serious danger. The decision we make is critical. Absolutely. That is his emphasis there. Yeah, and that is also really interesting, Trifle, that, Galdor was just referring to Saruman being the expert on ringlore. Gandalf immediately points to the real expert on ringlore, right? If you want to know somebody who knows rings of power, how about Sauron, right? And it's pretty clear that Sauron is fairly convinced if we want proofs, Sauron doesn't need them, right? He's convinced. And he made the bloody thing, right? So, okay. This is, and this is urgent. This is really time sensitive. So don't let this become a sort of academic debate, right? There is more at stake here than that. And Gandalf, of course, is also asserting, he's not given any evidence yet, right? But he is asserting that the gap in the knowledge of the wise has been filled, right? We know what it is. And notice how he characterizes Saruman's knowledge as learning the full truth, right? So he is speaking with confidence of the fact that the wise know the answer. Now remember, Galdor didn't suggest that they didn't, right? The wise may have reason to believe, right? But may we not see the proofs? And so, to some extent, Gandalf's answer to that question is beginning to sound like, no, actually, you can't see the proofs. Like, we don't have time for the proofs. You're going to have to trust me on that. Exactly. Take our word for it is one of the things that he is saying, which again is in line with what Galdor said, which is kind of interesting. Let's keep going. Some here will remember that many years ago, I myself dared to pass the doors of the necromancer in Dol Guldur, and secretly explored his ways, and found thus that our fears were true. He was none other than Sauron, our enemy of old, at length taking shape and power again. Some too will remember also that Saruman dissuaded us from open deeds against him, and for long we watched him only. Yet at last, as his shadow grew, Saruman yielded, and the council put forth its strength, and drove the evil out of Mirkwood. And that was in the very year of the finding of the ring, a strange chance, if chance it was. But we were too late, as Elrond foresaw. Sauron also had watched us, and had long prepared against our stroke, governing Mordor from afar through Minas Morgul, where his 9 servants dwelt, until all was ready. Then he gave way before us, but only feigned to flee, and soon after came to the Dark Tower and openly declared himself. Then for the last time the council met, for now we learned that he was seeking ever more eagerly for the One. We feared then that he had some news of it, that we knew nothing of. But Saruman said nay, and repeated what he had said to us before, that the One would never again be found in Middle-earth. At the worst, said he, our enemy knows that we have it not, and that it still is lost. But what was lost may yet be found, he thinks. Fear not, his hope will cheat him. Have I not earnestly studied this matter? Into Anduin the Great it fell, and long ago, while Sauron slept, it was rolled down the river to the sea. There let it lie until the end. Okay. Let's see. Yes. So sorry, I'm not seeing. I can't read the tiny little print that says your Twitter handle. But yes, to the person on Twitter who just posted that. Yes, by saying if chance it was, yes, absolutely, I do believe that Gandalf is pointing to Providence here, to the hand of Providence there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Bruce, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, it's 90 degrees rotated and it's in gray scale. It's faint gray scale and tiny letters, and I'm getting old. Thank you. Thank you for that. But yes, I definitely think that's what Gandalf is referring to there. Well, let's start with the first paragraph here. Gandalf recalls his own action, right? That he himself dared to pass the doors of the necromancer in Dol Guldur, and secretly explored his ways, and found thus that our fears were true. He was none other than Sauron, our enemy of old, at length taking shape and power again. Now, yeah, Tony, we absolutely need to talk about Sauron taking shape and power again. Growing in... Okay, taking shape is fairly specific. At length taking power again, that could be metaphorical in various ways, right? That is, was he himself growing stronger? Probably. Was he gaining power again? Was he taking power again in the sense of building up armies and enabling himself to be better prepared to wage war against the good people? There's several different ways, or all of those ways, in which we could understand him taking power again. But taking shape is, for me, a little bit harder to get around. Yeah, Enoch Arden says, I love the idea of Gandalf sneaking around Dol Guldur unbeknownst to Sauron or the Nazgul. That's exactly what it sounds like. He says that he secretly explored his ways. By what means did Gandalf disguise himself? Conceal himself? I don't know. But yes, Brandon, I can't get around the fact that shape implies a physical a physical form of some kind. Yeah, I agree. Yes, Angrist says, I find it more plausible that his fall against Elendil did true lasting damage and needed to heal, evidenced by his lack of a finger in his new form. Yes, I agree. Yes, we have seen this before, Trifle, at the end of the Akalabeth, when Sauron dwells in Barad-dûr taking a new form. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think that taking shape does sound to me probably literal, not metaphorical, that he is manifesting a shape that in the immediate years, like in the first few centuries, right, of the Third Age, he was probably a disembodied spirit, right? Yeah. Exactly, Tony. He has to manifest that form according to his will. Exactly. Yeah, weaker than the meanest ghost, something like that, Tony. Exactly. So, yes, exactly. As Chris says, it's the remnant of his ability to put on raiment. Yes, he has to body himself forth, and this is not easy anymore. He is, I mean, not only after the downfall of Numenor, but then after his overthrow. Remember, as we've talked about before, Sauron was slain, like his body was destroyed by Isildur and Elendil and Gil-galad. Yeah. So, Angrist, great question. If the Maiar can put on bodies like we wear clothes, why do they appear to have such issues with them, like Morgoth limp in Sauron's finger? Because they're different. They weaken themselves. Morgoth and Sauron are no longer... So there are two different things here. There are two different factors. One of which Tolkien never really fully reconciled, and the other of which he did. And of the former thing, of the ones that Tolkien hadn't fully reconciled, there are some exceptions to this. The business about the relationship with his body, like Melian, Luthien's mom, right? Kind of breaks a few things, right? It's complicated, but anyway, sorry, I'm laughing because somebody seems to be getting in trouble on the Twitch channel. Somebody was just saying, "Are my parents here?" And his dad responds, "I thought I told you to go to bed." So we're having an issue here. Anyway, sorry. It's nice to see both father and son indirectly bonding by both tuning into the show in different locations. But anyway, okay. So again, the whole question of like how firm are the relationship between the Ainur and their physical bodies is something which was kind of a fluctuating thing for Tolkien throughout the period and to well after the writing of the Lord of the Rings. So that's kind of an uncertain thing on the one hand, but the other thing which he had worked through much more definitely is the effect of evil, right? Morgoth before him and Sauron now have both spent their spirits in dominating the will of others. That's not metaphorical. It doesn't just mean that like they, were taking on a lot, right? It doesn't mean that they were just attempting to do, it means they literally are lessening themselves. They are weaker. Yeah, it's very possible, Tony, that he put a lot of his own power into his form, like into his servants, and losing it strips him of the power that they invested. Yeah, exactly. That seems very possible. As Chris was saying it, in both Morgoth's and Sauron's cases, they had externalized themselves into objects of power. Yes, exactly. But anyway, so yeah, no question that Sauron's death, I mean the destruction of his physical form on Mount Doom in the Battle of the Last Alliance, was a big deal. Took him a long time to recover from. And so long that some thought him destroyed. Some thought that thought they'd seen the last of him, right? Yeah. So that he's taking shape again is a big deal and makes sense in that circumstance. And Gandalf's mission, right, to Dol Guldur was to discover this guy, this necromancer that we've been hearing about, right? Who is he? Really? They clearly had suspicions, as he's revealing, right? I found thus that our fears were true. I don't know who's included in the hour here. All of them, right? Did everybody in the room have that fear? He and Elrond did, certainly, right? So yeah, he's been taking shape again and is now just about ready, right? At length taking shape and power again. I tend to think that the power refers to external power. Not that he is growing stronger again, but rather that he is taking shape. That refers to his own being, right? And that he is taking power again, meaning he's bringing the band back together, right? He's getting his orc armies together. He is beginning to establish himself as a power in Middle-earth again. Yeah. And yes, Marielle, of course, it also does completely recontextualize Gandalf bailing on the company outside of Mirkwood in The Hobbit. Yeah, he did have other things to do, right? That was, of course, not this discovery, right? That was when he found Thorin's map. But yeah, he had to meet up with Saruman and the rest of them to go kick the Mirkwood out of Dol Guldur. It was kind of a big deal, right? Yeah. So... yeah, good. Let's see. So yeah, taking shape and power again. Now, Flamifer, I agree with what you were saying before. If you're a first-time reader, you're not going to have any idea what that means, right? You don't have any of the Silmarillion context or anything to work into that. But it still is sufficiently creepy, right? At length taking shape and power again. This is our enemy of old. So the enemy has the ancient enemy, which has been a terrible threat before. Remember the way that this links back to the discussion about Elendil and his broken sword that we've been having, right? We defeated this guy once, though it took the deaths of the leaders of the elves and the men in order to do it, right? And Aragorn seems to be ready to sign up for the same thing again, right? In taking up the sword and reforging it. Yeah. So yeah, Mudmore saying, how likely is it that a necromancer just appears out of nowhere? Yeah, well, nobody really knows who he is or what he is exactly. It does seem to me plausible that there are human sorcerers, that there could be other people who do manage to perform, dark arts of some kind or other. There was a suggestion that it was one of the night. So for Thalamus, clearly you've got two different populations, right? You've got the general public, right, who has no idea what this necromancer could be, but doesn't find it impossible or like that weird. I mean, it's unfortunate that this dark sorcerer has arisen in our times, but these kind of things happen. And then the in crowd, right, the wise who kind of know some things, they're like, maybe it's one of the Ulairi. We've seen this before. Maybe this is Angmar Part 2, right? Certainly the Witch King is able to do things. Think about what he did in the Barrow Downs, right? He's able to commune with evil spirits and send them in places and stuff like that. So yeah. Oh, okay. Trifle saying, what definition of necromancer is Tolkien using? Raising the dead or communicating with the dead? I'm not going to answer that question right now, Trifle, but I can say tune in tomorrow night, because I hope to get to that in the Mythgard Academy, our discussion of Morgoth's Ring. There is some juicy necromancer material that I am totally going to be talking about. Footnote. Disclaimer. There's a non-zero chance that I won't get to those slides tomorrow because it's kind of near the end of what I have planned for tomorrow's class. So who knows? But at the very least, by next Wednesday, I will get to the really juicy necromancer bits. And there we go. There we go. So yeah, don't worry. Don't worry, Ambrose. Aurelianus, we're totally not going to skip that part. But yeah, 10 p.m. Eastern. That's it. 10 p.m. Eastern is the plan. That's it. Okay, anyway, so yeah, more on necromancer stuff, because the simple answer, Trifle, is that Tolkien had never specified. I mean, he used the word necromancer in The Hobbit, and it was not at all clear what he was imagining with that, like literally necromancy, like getting information from dead people, right, from the spirits of dead people. Is that actually what he's talking about? Or just in a more general sketchy magic way, like the way that they teach nigromancy in those convent schools that Morgan Le Fay was sent to in the beginning of Mallory. But anyway, yeah. So there's definitely more, and I don't think, for the record, a little spoiler of what I'm going to talk about, hopefully tomorrow night or possibly the week after, is my little spoiler is, I don't think Tolkien had ever decided that, honestly. I think that he had always been vague about it. And Trifle, I think that Tolkien himself did not answer that question about what did he mean by necromancer exactly until after he'd written The Lord of the Rings, until writing the passage of text that we're going to be talking about tomorrow night, which is on the laws and customs of the Eldar, the little essay that Tolkien wrote doing world building, explaining about elves and how they think and live in ways like he'd never done before. And this was in the late 50s that he was writing that. But anyway, okay. Let's, yeah, Lady Gunn says juicy necromancy sounds wrong. Yeah, it sounds at least distinctly unhygienic, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so we're doing the laws and customs of the Eldar tomorrow night, Trifle. That's exactly what we've gotten up to. We're starting right at the beginning. I just giggled my way through the post-mortem divorce of Muriel and Finwë last time, and then now we're up to the laws and customs of the Eldar. So it's fantastic. Anyway, okay. All right. But anyway, not distracting my own self. Getting back to, okay, so Gandalf says, now notice Gandalf is kind of giving his credentials here at the beginning, right? I'm telling you that I've just said, I'm going to need you to take my word for it to some extent, right? That this ring is the enemy's ring, right? But then I'm going to start off by reminding you, it was me who confirmed that the necromancer was Sauron in the first place, right? Turned out to be right about that, didn't I? Right? Kind of knew what I was talking about. We kind of, and oh wait, yeah. Did we kind of discovered that almost too late. In fact, it really was too late. Because by the time we did anything about it, it was too late. Sauron had his armies. They had, beat out the carpets and swept the threshold there at Barad-dûr on his behalf. And whammo, there he is, set up in Mordor. It's right. So, already we've been waiting too much. And this is what he emphasizes in the second paragraph, all the waiting, right? We were too late, as Elrond foresaw. Sauron also had watched us, right? We did a lot of watching, right? Some will remember that Saruman dissuaded us from open deeds against him. and for long we watched him only. And I loved the reverse. Sauron also had watched us, right? That's kind of what happens when you sit back and just watch, right? Saruman yielded, finally, the second time, and the council put forth its strength. And Tony, yes, he's already interweaving the two questions here, right? Saruman was involved then as well, right? What is Sauron's counsel to us in this hour? Well, let's also here begin by reviewing what Saruman's counsel has been to us in the past, right? Yes. Yes, Argent, exactly. So he's like, I would like to begin by making it perfectly clear to everyone that I was right and Saruman was wrong before, right? As long as we can agree on that, right? Yeah, I mean, he is. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to just make a joke out of it, right? I'm not saying that Gandalf is elevating himself here. That's not the point. But he is certainly inviting some critical thinking directed towards Saruman's advice, right? We didn't attack Sauron before. As soon as I discovered that it was Sauron, we didn't attack. And when we did attack, it was too late. And objective statement of fact, it was Saruman who led us on that path, right? Exactly, Tony. Planting a seed that he will harvest later seems to be exactly what he's doing. Exactly. Yeah, Trifle says, I think Gandalf might be in the process, or at least has in the last few months, of looking back at what Saruman has been saying for the last 300 years or so. Exactly. Yeah. So he is definitely setting up the Saruman story for later on. But notice the overall thrust of all this stuff, right, is, remember, Gandalf began with, what is Sauron up to, right? Sauron believes that this ring is his ring, clearly, right? I mean, come on. That's clearly what Sauron believes, right? So what are we going to do? Watch and wait, right? What are we going to do? Be like, well, I'm less than 100% convinced, right? This might not be. This might be a complete coincidence. Maybe Sauron is wrong, right? Okay, we could sit and think about this a lot longer. We could maybe do a lot more nothing like we've been doing. But look at what has happened, right? And Sauron has recently figured this out. Yeah, Sauron is definitely not waiting. Yeah, Tessa says, did Saruman know for sure that the necromancer was Sauron? He certainly did after Gandalf returned and reported it. Did he know that beforehand? Probably. But he certainly knew it. It was after it had been revealed. After Gandalf came back and said firsthand testimony that it's totally Sauron right there. Then Saruman still said, let's just wait and watch. Yeah. Then for the last time the council met, for now we learned that he was seeking ever more eagerly for the One. We feared then that he had some news of it, that we knew nothing of. But Saruman said nay, and repeated what he had said to us before, that the One would never again be found in Middle-earth. Okay, so after the banishment of Sauron, banishment to his stronghold, right, in Mordor, after the would-be, or apparently, kicking out of Sauron from Barad-dûr, the White Council meets again. Yeah, Trifle says, let's wait lasts 90 years. Yes, there's a 90-year gap of waiting between the one and the other, between the discovery. That's the amount of time, those 90 years, Trifor, the 90 years in which Gandalf has been walking around with Thorin's map in his pocket, right, and the key. Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Then the council meets again. For now and why did the council meet again? Because they learned that he was seeking ever more eagerly for the one. Somebody give me the dates. I can see some of you are poking around in Appendix B. What's the date of that last meeting of the White Council? When Saruman says nay and repeats what he had said before. 2953. Okay. 2953. So that was, let's see, right after, yeah, 12 years. Thank you. 12 years after. So they boot him out in 1241, or 2940, 1241. In 2941, right, is the Battle of the Five Armies and the kicking out of Sauron and the finding of the ring. And then in 10 years later, in 2951, Sauron declares himself, right, openly in Mordor. And 2 years after that, they have the final meeting, right? The final meeting. Okay. So, oh yeah, Matt says it's an interesting thing there not being a meeting. Saruman would, as head of the council, be the one to call it. That is interesting, given that this is in part an answer to why Saruman is not at this meeting. Yeah. Okay, so they meet 2 years after. They meet 2 years after the declaration of himself by Sauron, right? And already at that point, right, so Tony, it's been 65 years. People are throwing all kinds of dates at me here, and I always get these dates mixed up in my own head without looking them up myself. It's been 65 years since what, their previous... No, not since the previous meeting. Since the last meeting. Yeah, since their last meeting, the second meeting. Okay. All right. Okay. So at that point, 12 years after Bilbo has had the ring, Sauron is already looking for the ring. Hang on, guys. Can I ask you something? Stop speculating about Saruman. Now is not the time. We're not there yet. You got a bunch of people are asking, like, when did Saruman look in the Palantir for the first time? Would he have built an army? I don't care. We're not answering that question yet, okay? And so everybody discussing it is like, I can't read anything else here, okay? Focus on the passage here. We're talking about Sauron and Sauron taking shape and what the council knew about him, okay? So Sauron is looking for the ring, we are told. We had learned that he was seeking ever more eagerly for the one. That's why the council is called. That's what Gandalf says. Then for the last time the council met, for now we learned that he was speaking ever more eagerly. He was seeking ever more eagerly for the one. Right? He's looking for the ring of power, and so they say, does he know something we don't know? Right? Keep in mind, Gandalf has known about Bilbo's ring for more than a decade already. Right? Yeah, should we be worried is a question. So here's Gandalf. He's been uneasy. He's been uncertain. What is this ring of Bilbo's? Bilbo just found it. So notice one of the things that he's kind of doing, he is kind of answering Galdor's question, right? How did I fill in the gaps, right? Because there can be no absolutely direct evidence. No one is going to be able to present anything, any documents, right? Or not. Like if Gollum could be dragged in for interrogation, then maybe they could, but they don't have him, right? So without Gollum's physical presence, there's nothing other than Gandalf explaining his own experience, right? That is going to be able to prove to people that this ring is definitely Sauron's ring, right? So Gandalf is uneasy. Saruman says, don't worry about it. Saruman tells the council, the ring will never again be found in Middle-earth. Yeah, I agree. The script on the ring is pretty telling, Marielle, right? And it's interesting nobody brings over like a blowtorch or something, right? No one gets a nice candle, right? Puts the ring in the fire to show everybody right then. It doesn't happen, right? Yeah. Saruman's speech. What do you think about Saruman's speech here? At the worst, our enemy knows that we have it not, and that it still is lost. But what is lost may be found, he thinks. Fear not. His hope will cheat him. Have I not earnestly studied this matter? Into Anduin the Great it fell, and long ago, while Sauron slept, it was rolled down the river to the sea. There let it lie until the end. Yeah, Tony, literally, taken literally, that always seemed really weird to me, right? I mean, I distinctly remember as a kid being skeptical of that. I remember as a child, my response to that passage was, they bought that? Rolled down the river to the sea? I mean, come on, how likely is that? Right? Hundreds of miles down the river? Like, have you ever seen a riverbed before? It is possible, right? Angra says, I dropped my wedding ring and found it a good 10 feet away. That's true, right? But, yeah. It could theoretically happen, I guess. Maybe. But I find it, unlikely. Unlikely. Here's my question. Why is Gandalf quoting Saruman here? Let's peek ahead. His next words, of course, are going to be, Gandalf fell silent, gazing eastward from the porch to the far peaks of the misty mountains, at whose great roots the peril of the world had so long lain hidden. He sighed. There I was at fault, he said. I was lulled by the words of Saruman the Wise, but I should have sought for the truth sooner, and our peril would now be less. I was lulled by the words of Saruman the Wise. Saruman's chief message is fear not, right? Have I not earnestly studied this matter? Trust me. You see the irony here? Saruman said to Gandalf almost exactly what Gandalf is saying to the rest of the council right now, right? Trust me. Yeah, Enoch, I think that Gandalf did basically believe it because he wanted to, right? He was troubled. He was worried about Bilbo's ring, right? Remember that even his own version of the story back in Frodo's parlor in chapter 2, well, the old chapter 2, suggested the same kind of thing, right? How he kept making excuses. Still, he comes from a long-lived family, right? On his mother's side. It wasn't until the party it wasn't until the moment when Bilbo tried to get rid of the ring and failed initially, right, that Gandalf finally recognized, finally embraced the fact, finally stopped resisting his fear, his doubts, right? He clearly wanted to not, he was motivated to believe that this was not the enemy's ring. And Saruman has clearly played on that, right? Fear not. Have I not earnestly studied this matter? We can eliminate that as a possibility. And look, remember, he's right. He has earnestly studied the matter. Everybody knows, Galdor knows, everybody knows that Saruman is the expert on the Rings of Power. Nobody else has earnestly studied this matter. Who's going to question him? What reasons do they have for doubting him? Remember, Galdor is not doubting the wise. The wise doubtless have reason to believe this, right? He just very politely asks to see the proofs, or asks, is it okay for them to see the proofs, right? Yeah. But Galdor would have believed, and had Saruman come in and told him, right, just as he was seeking for Saruman's wisdom, he would have, Galdor would certainly have believed him, right? Yeah, Karita says, I feel for Gandalf here. A lot of us know what it's like to have questions or doubts, only to talk ourselves into ignoring them, looking for the confirming advice from someone whom we trust. Absolutely. Yeah. For Thoughtless says Saruman is basically guaranteeing the occurrence of an event that no one saw and that can't be tested after the fact. Yes, that is true. But he is saying, have I not earnestly studied this matter? I'm not making this up, right? Into Anduin the Great it fell, and long ago, while Sauron slept, it was rolled down the river to the sea. I have a theory about this. He says, have I not earnestly studied this matter? What kinds of studies would he have been doing into this? Long experiments with, has he dropped similarly weighted golden rings into similar rivers and observed carefully their progress and discovered that the percentage of times in which rivers in fact successfully bear the rings down? No, I don't think that's what he's saying. Nor do I think he's saying that I have scrupulously searched the Anduin and it's totally not there, I promise you. That's clearly not what he's saying. So what's he saying? I think we're making an assumption here. That is, we're comparing his earnest study of this matter to like traditional academic earnest study of this matter. And I don't necessarily think that that's what he would be doing. Look at that sentence again. Into Anduin the Great it fell, and long ago while Sauron slept, it was rolled down the river to the sea. Let's do a grammar study again. What do you notice about that sentence? Long ago while Sauron slept, it was rolled down the river to the sea. Passive voice again. Exactly. Who did the rolling? Who did the rolling? He doesn't say it rolled down the river to the sea. Like, they do. Now, who did the rolling? This is a trick question. It's passive voice, which suppresses the subject, the doer of the action, right? I always read that. Back when I thought this was, when I was a kid and I thought this was really weak, I always read that as it rolled. I skipped the was, essentially, in my own mind. While Sauron slept, it rolled down the river to the sea. But that's not what he says. It was rolled. Something rolled it down the river to the sea. Tarloniel says, Ulmo strikes again! Yeah. Actually, kinda, yeah. One possible way to translate this. Paraphrase Saruman. Don't worry. We've got this. Right? The Valar have our backs. They took care of this. It went into the river, yes. And it's been taken from the river to the sea. Remember, like, chucking it in the ocean is going to be one of the things they're going to suggest about doing with the ring, right? There will be that will emerge in a few pages from now as one viable option about how to handle the ring and prevent Sauron from ever getting it. Saruman appears to imply to me that someone else has taken a hand here. I don't think he's suggesting that a golden ring would naturally roll hundreds of miles down a river spontaneously to end up in the ocean. Right? Yeah, Enoch, exactly. I too always made that mistake. Read it as it rolled down the river to the sea, not it was rolled. And yes, Ambrosius Aurelianus, there is indeed that sort of precedent. There is, in fact, a Silmaril in the bottom of the ocean, right? The idea that a thing can be, sort of lost and to remain lost, in those kinds of ways. That's it would be one way. It would be one way in which the Valar could take a hand here. It would be an indirect hand, right? I mean, they'd be rolling the ring down. They wouldn't be striking against Sauron, but if they did want to do this, right, if they did want to make it possible, they did want to kind of help safeguard the people of Middle-earth somehow. So when Saruman says, "Have I not earnestly studied this matter?" Again, he's not performing scientific experiments. He's not just going on searches. He's certainly not claiming to have done so. We know that he has searched, but that's not what he's saying, right? I think this is why he's saying fear not. And I think this is why Gandalf is lulled. That's an important word, lulled, by these words, right? What is he playing on? Now, several you're saying, is Saruman using his voice? Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely he is, right? But why does it work? Why does it work on all the wise? Because this is something that they would really want to hear, right? Exactly, Tony. They're both subject to the authority of the Valar. Are either one of those Gandalf? Is it Gandalf going to say like, "Oh, I think it's pretty unlikely that the Valar would take any direct or indirect hand in this matter"? Well, he is the hand of the Valar in this matter, right? And so also, I don't think if Saruman says, "I have studied this matter and I conclude that this is what happened," like I have reason to believe. Trust me, I have reason to believe that somebody stepped in and took the ring, right? I think it's there's lots of reasons to be lulled by that. There's reasons to question it, especially in retrospect, right? Yeah, Mad Violinist says it's the evidence of any good long con. Yeah, exactly. He's been trading on the trust that they have and the knowledge that they have. I mean, so to the other elves, right, to Galadriel and Elrond and them, they would be like, well, he's the Maya sent from Valinor to help us, right? And the one in charge, right? The most powerful of those who arrived. Maybe he has some insight and has been given some insight into this, right? And he has studied this matter, and maybe this is what he came up with, right? Maybe he has reason to know. And is it impossible? No. It's happened before. With the Silmarils, it happened, in a sense, right? That, they were sort of taken into protective custody, right, in the depths of the sea and elsewhere. Saruman is being very indirect in saying that. Notice Saruman is also not perjuring himself or anything, right? He does not say, okay, guys, listen, it almost sent me a message. I was there, right? I was out by my duck pond, and Ulmo rose up out of my duck pond and was like, I would like you to know that I took care of that ring problem. Tell the guys, right? And he's like, okay, thank you, Ulmo. Like, he doesn't say that, right? He doesn't spin them a story. He is, Aranas, as you say, intentionally vague, right? And but he permits them, prompts them, right, to fill in the gaps. He doesn't claim it, but I think that he leaves that open there. There let it lie until the end. He says as if, like, this is clearly what the Valar want, right? And there's precedent for that. The Silmarils are going to lie, and there's a Silmaril in the bottom of the ocean lying until the end, right? So, like, let the Ring of Power, Sauron's Ring of Power, join, like, the collection of extremely rare and extremely important artifacts lying at the bottom of the sea until the end, right? Exactly, WKU fan. I absolutely do agree that line there, let it lie until the end, capital E, does specifically draw the lore of the Silmarils into their minds. Now, first-time readers not going to hear that, obviously, but Galadriel and Elrond certainly will. Absolutely. Exactly. It would mean that it's in the keeping of the Valar. Yeah. Yeah. What? Why wouldn't you be lulled by that if that was told you by somebody that you had reason to trust and reason to believe might know it, or might plausibly gain some insight into that? I think that's great. I think that is a really cunning move by Saruman. Yeah. And now Karita says Gandalf could be like, so how do you know? Did you talk to the Valar? But he doesn't push it because it would be rude, because it risks him to find out something he doesn't want to hear. Well, there, I think, so if you think about it, I had back when I struggled with this passage, when I used to struggle with this passage, my big problem was I felt it was a really tough sell for the voice of Saruman. Right? That Saruman has to, I mean, I knew he had the power, but that Saruman has to, like, what he has to accomplish with the application of the voice of Saruman here is, I'm going to spin you this wildly implausible story about the ring spontaneously rolling by the natural current of the river down into the ocean. And don't ask me any questions, right? Accept this kind of ridiculous explanation and go about your business. Like, I thought that's what, and that seemed to me, that was a lot, right? But that's not what's going on here, right? What's going on? He's given them, in fact, a quite plausible story, right? The Valar have taken it into their keeping. They have stepped in, not in any flashy way, but in exactly the kind of way that the Valar do still step in, right? So it fits their MO, right? They've stepped in. They have taken it swims with the Silmarils now. The ring does, right? The Valar have taken it. They've got it. So fear not. Fear not. Everything's fine. Now, what is he exerting his voice to do? So Karita, all he has to exert his voice to do is to say, don't ask, believe it. You want to believe that. You know, because it would be terrifying if Sauron were to find his Ring of Power again. And we called this meeting because there were rumors that he was searching for the Ring of Power again and wanting to find it, right? So I am going to put all of the force of my voice simply into the phrase, fear not, right? Don't be afraid. I'm going to reassure you, like it would kind of be my job to do, to accept this thing that you're going to want to believe anyway, and which makes sense, and which fits the pattern in the picture and the story we've had. And all you've got to do is just not question it, not doubt me, not be like, come on, man, really? You know, get Ulmo on the line and get him to confirm this, right? That's all, right? That's just don't do that. And Karita, as you say, that wouldn't be the natural inclination anyway, right? Gandalf wouldn't be inclined to be that skeptical towards Saruman, right? He wouldn't be like, oh, well, yeah, I can't believe anything that guy has to say, right? Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Karita. It is pretty horrible for Gandalf to find out that someone he should have every reason to trust is lying to him. And this was a big one, this lie, right? WKU says, is Saruman lying at this point, or does he believe it himself? It's pretty clear that he's lying, that this is an active piece of deception on this. Yeah, and good, Lincoln, you're also right. This reminds him of our discussion from a couple weeks ago about how in previous epochs you assumed people were telling you the truth unless you had a good specific reason to believe otherwise. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay. Well, and we've already peeked ahead at Gandalf's remorse about being lulled, in his retrospective remorse at being lulled. But we'll come back to that passage next time. I kind of skimmed through the paragraph leading up to it. I don't want to do that too much. We'll come back to that. We're not going to skip over that paragraph. So we'll come back to that interesting piece of prose description before Gandalf's next paragraph, which I think is a really quite interesting and an emotionally powerful moment, actually, for Gandalf. But we'll do that next week. Thanks, everybody. We're going to switch over to our field trip now. So I'm going to say goodbye to folks on Twitter and on the town here. And, here, look at that. Just as I say that, Narnian is going away. Got to cover that here, if that happens. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm going to say goodbye to Twitter, folks. Thank you guys there. And we'll switch over to twitch.tv/SignumU. All right.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
All right. Good evening. All right. Here, let me expand this. All right.
So, finishing up the Necropolis today, huh?
That's right. We're going to finish the Necropolis. That's the goal.
Sweet.
All right, so let us head back to Angmar. Let's go to Gathforthnir, and we'll head down from there.
All right. All right, they have a thing, right? So intriguing lecture tonight. Just a lot of little subtle things, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting things. And this is one of the things that had bothered me most for a really long time. The whole, what had seemed to me the wild implausibility of Saruman's story. And it's like, how big of a sucker was, Gandalf and Galadriel and Elrond and all of them? Like, they bought that story about they'd rolled down to the sea? But when I made that last final connection was...
There's precedent.
Yeah, exactly.
The ocean, the legendary garbage dump.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like the Sharps bag for, legendary articles.
Exactly.
Wait to the end of the days, it'll be picked up and disposed of properly.
That's right. Yes, throw your extremely dangerous, unique artifacts here. That you don't want to call, the wrath of the Feanorians down upon yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Trifle, make sure to bring that question up next time about his hope cheating him. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that next time.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Should we head out? I always want to keep. I know I just now that I'm not traveling, but just porting here. I'm always a little. We've got somebody say Milthalia wants a port. She's says she's by the Prancing Pony.
Prancing Pony.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone can bring her here.
Yeah, if anyone can't, I can, but I need to do like right now.
Yeah, maybe you could bring her in, Valari. We can.
Okay.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
No bravado.
Cool. All right.
There's not too many concerts out front. It's getting a little slow. Let's see.
Okay. So let me.
Okay.
We got to that place at the core with the deadly water, the deadly green water.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there was a bunch of places further up that we hadn't gotten to, further up the sides of the bowl there.
Yeah, I think so. Well, there was that long staircase again.
Right. And so to recap what we were seeing, this was clearly an ancient burial place of the original generation of men who lived here.
Yes.
But then we've seen no other clear evidence of modern hillmen using it as a burial spot. It was just an ancient burial spot which was taken over by Old Angmar first, and then New Angmar afterwards.
Yes, that explains a lot of the interference we've seen with metal dealies all over the...
Yeah. Okay. All right, we ready? Let's head out. We've got some Necropolis exploring to do. So, now remind me, the
Mind you what? Sorry. I cut out a bit there.
Oh, sorry. Okay, here we go. The buildings that were like full of skulls, and with the ones that were full of skulls and had the green, the bluish stone.
Lazuli.
Yeah. Did we decide that those were Old Angmar or New Angmar?
I think we said old because it didn't quite match the new shiny dark metal stuff, but it also didn't match the ancient barrows.
Right. Okay. So I think that the thing that, but it meant also that all of those hooded ladies were definitely Old Angmarim as well.
Yes.
Which seemed kind of puzzling. And I still
it's
don't really
puzzling, but we also we haven't seen any of that stone in any of the new Angmarim stuff.
Yes.
So until we see it in some of the newer contexts, it's difficult to say that it came from one age or the other.
Yeah, true.
Same thing with the Wall of Skulls. We haven't seen anything like that in the new shiny Angmar stuff. Just
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Where haven't we been? I feel like the stuff.
Last stop was the big poisonous lake.
Yeah, the big poisonous lake. So we were over there on the right-hand side. We came over
We've
here
been on
the
this
first
side
time.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember how to get to the places that we haven't been.
Mm-hmm. I think we're pretty much got a lot of it, barring the stairway to the old library where the auditor was.
Is this whole region covered in dread or just a bridge?
I think it's the ghosts.
Oh, it's the
that
guy?
we're passing through. Yeah, the guys do it. Pretty
okay.
sure.
Just that we happen to be standing next to one. I see.
Yeah, these are the ones that we decided were the fell nature spirits that were twisted, much like the Red Lady. And that's what we sort of hypothesized the giant blue lapis lazuli ladies were. They were elementals that were twisted or warped, similar to the Blood Maiden.
Right. Okay, so these, the things on the wall, these are all the ancient ones. Who made the wooden platform?
Definitely new. We can see it's got these new brass fittings all over.
Yeah, these are new. It's like they're trying to make it easier to get around in here, because...
Maybe the ground's unstable.
Right. So they must have been doing some more recent construction. Oh, there we were, yeah. So we're up above. There's the poison lake.
Waterfall.
Yeah.
And
the poison waterfalls. Right.
It almost looks like polluted water coming from some sort of dam up there.
Yeah. There we go. I don't want to fall down, but okay.
No, do not fall into that. It's going to be a while before we come back.
Okay, so there's the big poison water coming all the way down from essentially Carn-dûm, right? Is that Carn-dûm we're pointing to? No, it's Uragarth.
Uragarth.
But it looks
like runoff.
Yeah.
That's a twist.
That's really kind of lovely, right? I mean, we've talked before about the way in Lodra they're pretty faithful to the idea, to Tolkien's oft sort of expressed idea of the desolation of evil, right? When evil...
Yeah, the dark satanic mills.
Yeah. And this is a real... I mean, I don't... We have seen, a river be polluted by passing through it and stuff, right? And we saw what happened to, what happened to the brown lands and the areas there on the other side of the black marshes that are the dead marshes that make Sam feel sick, and what the sort of fear is going to be coming over Ithilien increasingly. Yeah, interesting. So the visual image that this presents is that this place has been almost incidentally corrupted, like almost accident. I won't say accidentally because it's clearly not a complete accident, but I mean it might have been with some planning involved, but just that this river that once flew out of it now simply just conveys the corruption from Carn-dûm.
By the look of it, this river goes all the way up to Carn-dûm.
Yeah.
So yeah, whether this is an unintentional byproduct of some sort of evil metal working, or whether this was a happy accident, or because they wanted to make the dead unquiet anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me wonder how much of the... And now this makes sense that it's in this area, right, near the lake, near the runoff, both up here on the cliffside and down there in the valley where we were last week, that we find those dread mists and fell spirits, right? Some of which seem to be coming in and some of which seem to be corrupted local spirits, as you suggested.
I remember the ones on the island were not the angry, vengeful spirits that are usually out here. The ones that were on the island were sorrowful spirits.
Right.
They wonder if the water is somehow, maybe they were not intended to wake up and they're just sort of there or something because of the river, or who knows.
Right. Yeah, and it goes through Urugarth, and it comes from the Carndum sewers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of a lovely parallel. I mean, the idea of it being like polluted in the way that a sewer might pollute a river is like it's like making physical the metaphor, right?
Of corruption and
of the corruption, light. Yeah, exactly.
Those two aren't too far off, honestly.
Yeah, interesting.
It's loss of love for the land, loss of respect for the land.
Yeah, Aranast and Aradrush are talking about Helkgam, which is thought to be the source of the corruption by the hillmen, and so we'll have to.
Yeah, I want to find what the source is.
We'll have to look into that when we get up Carndum and Urugarth way. But let's keep going up here, since we're here along the side, and we found this trail that leads up to these stairs. This is where that library is?
Yeah, I believe so.
And then here we've got
we were all excited, and we thought it'd be untold knowledge, and it was like an IRS guy doing audits.
Right. Oh, wait, hang on, before we go up the steps, because we can get around to there this way, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah, look, see, there is a bunch more over here.
Yep.
Let's see if we see anything interesting.
Red lights. Glowy red lights.
Whoa, that's another statue up here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that.
See, I'm gonna Funko Bubble Pop with that.
Okay, so here we've got some more of that blue stone, which
this
looks
is a
like
different
old
kind
Angmar.
of altar.
Yeah. And then the old catacombs. What are these guys? These guys are merciless fell spirits. Okay.
Yeah, see, then once again, we're getting to the angry stuff.
All right.
Looks like they're sucking in light from... Oh, no, that's just the boundary rocks. Oop, get in the eye. Just gonna back up a
When this guy looks
little.
at, this statue, so, I mean, he almost looks like he's swimming, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so who... Let's see, and these guys over here, right? Oh, merciless guys. Bunches of fell spirits back here.
Uh-huh. Tolmoth. Another little makery bakery here.
Oh. Yeah, I can't. I'm experiencing so much dread that I can barely see it.
It's got the iron crown carved on it like the others.
Yeah. Yes, I can make that out. There it is. Okay. So these are old Angmar. So I think then looking over at the plinth of the statue itself, I'm going to go with old Angmar for the statue too.
I thought these were the new ones, but I'm not sure.
Maybe not.
I can't remember whether they said that the statues were new or just some of them were new because they were looking to make more like demon phylacteries for them.
Yeah. Let me back off a little bit and see if I can see it any better.
Yeah, just a bit.
No, still same quantity of dread even from this distance. What's my dread up to? 5? Good grief.
Yep.
It's a lot of dread.
Quite. Oh, staircase over there, too.
I don't have any hope tokens, do I? No. Of course. Narnian has never quested, so I wouldn't have any hope tokens. That's alright. I should send some to Narnian just so that I can queer up my graphics when I'm in a dreadful place.
Yeah.
Okay, merciless and wrathful spirits again. All right. There's some
Yeah,
Gryffindors over there. So really, we're seeing just ancient ruins. I still think that blue stuff is definitely old Angmar. Maybe the statue is new. Because there are definitely some touches, like we saw some of the some of the fishhook spikes, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely evidence that the new Angmar has come through and tried to sort of stir things up again, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
And so maybe they have apparently been successful with the statue back there, as we can see all these wrathful and merciless spirits who seem to be connected with it,
or maybe the
by
metal pieces that were put on the tombs, maybe the statues to activate those.
maybe Let's see, and then
that is a giant hand.
wait, where's
Oh,
the
it
giant
is. Hewn giant hand. Arm.
hand? Where?
Right near me.
Wait, where?
It's over here. Yeah, down in the pond in front of me.
In the pond?
But don't get too close. It's a rare lead.
Oh!
Yeah. That's the noise I made when I saw it.
Oh, a ginormous crawling arm.
Yeah. Like you do. Someone's trying to take it. All right.
Wow.
Well done, guys. That is huge.
So it's like the severed zombie hand of a giant?
Yeah, but it said it literally giant arm.
Whoa.
Hewn giant arm.
Wow. Okay. Oh man, there's lots of stuff over here. Let's see, so this is the way down to the shores of the Poison Lake, right?
I believe so. A bit turned around.
Okay. Yeah.
There's
I
a
think
lot
so.
of stairs, and not all of them go places.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that.
Yeah, the Poison Lake dead end.
Yeah, and it's the back side of the island that we ended on last time.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's a cute little hand.
It's a baby arm.
Okay. One of the things I'm trying to figure is the waterfalls and things. Whether this was originally a non-deadly lake, whether it was originally a lake which has been made poisonous, or whether it was the whole water is new. See what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not sure. This area does seem like it's flooded quite a lot. You can see like the black vines coming out of the pond over here.
Yeah.
It does seem like a lot of this place has taken on more water than intended. Also consider these buildings are starting to sink into the ground.
Right, certainly this one here, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe this was a river whose course was diverted to flow into here.
Well, right, that's what I'm wondering. If it's not just that those waterfalls used to be nicer, but that they were less before.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, right.
Looks like a lot's been changed over the millennia.
Yeah, exactly. Like it happens, you know. Yeah. Emma Thorne, I agree that none of this was poison before. My question was just whether there was water before.
Yes.
Okay. Guess I should mount up again.
But yeah, this place is sinking into the ground like Mexico City here.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
See this?
There's some more. So, I don't see the function of these. Oh, here's the top of the waterfall. Look at that.
Ooh. Wonder how large the area of effect for that spray is.
Yeah.
yeah, you can see all this stuff is underwater, like it wasn't meant to be here.
Right.
I wonder if we go along the
Yep.
side, we'd see more evidence of water going in a different direction.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. So these are still my question, though. I mean,
What's
most
that?
of this looks like all of these paths and stairs and everything all seem to have been built by the ancient people who made these tombs. And this was clearly, and I agree, this river was clearly not here before. So this whole, not just the poison, but the river itself has been created recently. But why did they do this? Is this natural? Is this a natural slab?
I can't tell whether it's natural or whether it was something and it's rounded off now. Almost looks like it was something and then it was just worn away over the years.
Maybe. Because we haven't seen any natural, just like natural occurring rocks of this material.
I assumed it was imported, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's always looked like. But, yeah, okay.
I'd have to see what it belonged to. No, there's definitely a carven edge over here that was worn away.
That was my first thought, too. But, okay, so my question is, I still don't get this stuff.
Me neither.
Like, what the old Angmarim were doing. What the new Angmarim are doing seems fairly clear. Stirring things up is what the new Angmarim are doing.
Yeah.
So they put that statue there. They put the... Oh, look, it's a treasure chest. And the ancient peoples were clearly just minding their own business and burying their dead. But... But that is a really huge waterfall.
Yeah. It does look like it was carved in here, like maybe there was a reservoir or a lake on the other side, a natural reservoir. And then they just carved into the side of the mountain to let it all go. Wish we could go up there and see.
Yeah. But I don't understand the pattern. I don't understand the function. Because through here, if we're right in thinking that this stone here is from Old Angmar, like what did they do? What were they accomplishing? There seemed to be random, what? Tombs? Maybe they're not tombs. Maybe they're altars. Random altars that were constructed in random
Maybe.
places?
Yeah. Maybe it's some kind of prison, like you put the body in and the spirit comes out or something, or the spirit inhabits it, or something like that. Something to trap or entice fell spirits. Yeah, the fact that we've never seen the stone in any part of Middle-earth does say a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
This might have come all the way from, who knows, Mordor?
That would be a long way to transport large blocks of stone, but...
Maybe this is where the purple metal comes from. Maybe it's refined from this kind of rock or metal or something like that, and the purple metal
Maybe.
was like a better way, so they quit using the blue stone and they used the metal, which they could refine themselves.
Maybe. Because, yeah, all right. Hang on. Glancing from here.
I mean, you can see why they ducked it in here, though, because this place is not strategically of any import or interest to Angmar. There's no soldiers here. There's no barracks. This is not an area of, geological importance, military importance. This is a sealed-in kind of canyon. So you could see why, the higher-ups just said, I'll just flood it. There's nothing there, and what quiet spirits we woke up are going to stick around,
Right, they're not going to drown him.
We knew they were here. Like, maybe this was a failed experiment, like they tried waking up the dead and they couldn't get him to do anything.
Right, so old Angmar just kind of gave up on it?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe this is a failed experiment, because
'Cause see,
otherwise why would they just dump it all in there?
That that wall down there, which we can see so well from here,
Uh-huh.
that's old Angmar. Most of it.
Yeah.
Right, most of it is from Angmar. The statues, right? Those women with their hands held out like this in front of them, right?
Yep.
And their heads down, their hooded heads down. And then those are skull walls behind them.
Yeah.
The walls with the bones all built into them and stuff.
Yeah, the cheap burial option.
So why did they do this? Yeah, the whole new Angmarim attempts to stir up trouble again seem easy to understand, but what the old Angmarim were trying to accomplish here? Why all the statues?
Maybe this. I mean, if I figure if you're trying to start up as a necromancer, you couldn't get better than a necropolis. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is like the center of their rituals once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
But
the statues
question
certainly
is,
do
why
have a
does
kind of ritual appearance.
Yeah, so this looks like like every Egyptian horror movie where they have to go to the Black Temple and perform the black rites. Blah blah blah.
Right.
And it's rife with spirits for the calling. So that part makes sense. The big part is, why did they come back, throw a bunch of little purple metal things all over the place, and then just say, nah, we're flooding it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like it's totally flooded. It's just made a really ominous island down there.
That's true. The whole place isn't destroyed, just a little bit of it. But I mean, the question is, what is the Witch King thinking? Is he even overseeing any of this? Obviously, he's moved on to bigger and better things.
Right. I mean, he's delegated Angmar the second time round.
Yeah. So I wonder if it looks like the second one's more interested in whatever the function of this water is, whether it's getting it out of the way for more important things. Usually it's just, we don't want this water here, send it somewhere else.
Right.
And I don't care where somewhere else is, as long as it doesn't bother me. So it definitely implies that this place is less used for rituals now, and it's just sort of it is no longer the import that it was in the first Angmar Age.
Right, so it was made into this. So this area down here in the valley especially was some kind of center of old Angmarim ritual. Right, and Lilirath, you're right, it could very well be a deliberate corruption of the land. This last time around. So it wouldn't be merely flooding it in the sense of rejecting it, but as a mechanism for doing something, which seems to be bearing fruit with the dread mists and stuff up there.
Yeah, corrupted nature spirits everywhere,
Yeah.
Brandon wants to know who the Witch King was now, and I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah. No, that's going to be fun when we do that in Film. I'm going to be excited about that.
Yeah, I made some speculations on an old article I wrote a long time for Mythgard, but couldn't find the file anywhere. It was so sad. I wanted to read it just for fun. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh, wait, hang on a second. What? We're dead-ended here? Oh,
yep,
yes,
dead-ended.
I missed the steps over there.
Yeah, steps.
This is...
You can see why they put the steps in now.
Yeah, hang on. Oh, wait, hang on. Oh, we missed the other big steps. Hang on, let's go up the stairs here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We've been up here, but not for a long time. Was that back in a... Did we come up here before? In a field trip?
Yeah, I think that was when we were just starting out Lord of the Rings Online, honestly.
Or was it when we did... I can't remember. Anyway, let's go up now in the context of having looked at all this stuff. This is clearly the ancient stonework, so this would have been the highest point, certainly, of anything that we've seen. Don't see anything else.
Sure, there's lots of rituals involving carrying something up here, rites, tributes, sacred fire.
Right.
What are these guys? These guys are enslaved fell spirit.
Oh dear. More decayed
Yeah,
hands.
see, they're not just moody. They've actually been enslaved.
Right. Exactly.
Gryffindors.
Right.
Oh, a necromancer.
Where's the necromancer? Oh, up there.
Right. They just got killed. Yeah.
I know there's another one up on the up on top here. So.
So yeah, these are the guys we've been looking for. Going, hey, what's going on here?
Right. So we've got some new Angmarim hanging out here even now.
Yep. Shame we can't press them for info.
Okay. Good. I'm glad. I was afraid for a minute that it was not going to be clear enough to see all the way down into the valley from here, but we can see pretty well.
Oh yeah. The dam with the green water is obscured.
Yeah.
For me.
We can see it. Yeah. Too much cloud to see that over there, but okay. Oh, and now here is a piece of. Is this skull stone? No. What is this?
I think
green?
that's further up though. Oh, there's skulls over here.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's not how you make your city of the dead for all your undead ritual, I don't know how else, honestly.
Right.
Just the work that went into that.
Oh, and here's more.
Yep. Yep. There's all the necromancers. They look like they're digging in the dirt for stuff, like trying to find relics or something.
Yeah, what are they?
What are these embers all over the place?
Embers?
I swear, it's like, yeah, there's like little orange things floating
right,
up all
the
over
little,
the place.
yeah.
They look like the ground is just sort of spontaneously combusting a little. Up, bluestone. Oh, is this bluestone and skulls? It's bluestone and skulls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yup, in beautiful geometric shapes. Iron Crying Necromancer. Here we go.
Okay.
It's all tied together.
And here is wait, there's a named guy over there?
Is there?
Or did he already get killed?
Oh, big altar. It's got the new stuff. It's got the purple iron fish hooks, and it's got the blue stone, and it's got, yeah, up top. Little anti-pigeon guards on top.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a beautiful combination of all three ages.
And look, then there's and there are the women statues up above.
Oh, yep, good catch. Yep.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right
So it looks like, yeah.
about the different levels. I mean, those statues are clearly not. Hold on, wait, there he is again. Nope, This is a spirit master. Oh, this guy.
Delucious.
Delucious.
He's delicious.
Right, there's okay. So it's a named spirit. That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
Hey, could somebody look up the quest text for that quest to kill that dude and tell me who he is? Can we get some story on that guy?
Yeah, seriously.
That would be handy. All right. But yeah, I think that you are right about the three different areas or ages here. Because here we have got this ancient set of catacombs here. And we've
dang,
got the... Yeah, hey, Druid's Fire, I'm too lazy to click on things. Can you paste the text in? That's what I would really quite like. Because, like, clicking on links involves browsers opening goodness knows where and me having to hunt for them and all kinds of things.
Okay, give me just a sec, please.
So they built this whole skull wall up around the old one. And then they also put this altar in the middle. And then the new guys came along and they're like, what this needs is green fire and gigantic fish hook things up at the top. Okay, all right, here we go. These tokens bear signs of Angmar, terrible sigils that may well be binding the fell spirits to this place, as we suspected. You must find the shrine used by the Angmarim in their rituals. I believe it is on an islet in a small pond. Okay, maybe difficult to find.
Southern Imlad, Balcorth.
Sure. If you call forth the spirits at the shrine, I believe they will come to that place one last time, there to be banished forever. There is a dreadful chance, though. I will confess my folk are not well versed in dealing with evil spirits. I think the elves would know more, and there are few enough of those in Angmar. Well, more than you'd think. Galdor examined the tokens you discovered from the fell spirits and discovered they bear signs of Angmar. Okay. A name was written upon them. Delucius.
Delucius.
Okay. Right. Okay. Sigils binding them to the mortal world. Well, that's clear. Well, thank you. Lilireth was pasting into that. Thank you very much for that. Okay. All right. So this, I don't see the sigils though. Maybe we're not meant to see them.
No, I think those are we're supposed to be accepted that that's what we've picked off these necromancers.
Right. What's he holding? Is that a scroll?
Oh.
Or a baton? No, it's a sword. Sorry, it's a sword, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
it's
just-
always knives with these guys.
Yeah, well. For a second I thought he was holding a scroll and I was kind of excited about that. Okay. Sorry, now I'm just temporarily distracted trying to imagine what genre of music concert is he at? Can't quite
It'd be
place it.
It'd be like Blind Guardian or something.
Maybe. I don't know, it's not quite jerky enough. There's much more
Yeah,
stomping
yeah.
involved.
Norwegian death metal?
No, I don't think it's metal. I don't think it's metal.
It's not just metal? No, you don't think it's metal? So we're thinking more like Tempest, like folk metal
Or
kind
something.
of
Or,
thing.
Arnost suggests trance. I could believe that.
Prog rock. This is how you dance to prog rock. There is no dancing.
Yeah, he does. I think the fact that he kind of looks like he's holding a lighter up is what made me think of it in the first place. But
Yeah, yeah. Oh, speaking of metal, did you hear Alice Cooper's single drop today?
I did not.
That was nice. Yeah, he wrote a nice song for everybody in quarantine. Or was that yesterday? I have no concept of the time. It was
Yeah.
really nice. I like him. Vincent's a good guy.
Okay, all right, hang on a sec.
All right.
Lilireth has more text. It occurs to me that this spirit you fought is, after all, a creature of the same ilk as those we seek to banish. He must not be controlled by the shrine, or he would not have been able to flee you so easily when he was on the brink of defeat. My guess is that another controls Delicious. The necromancers of Imlad Balcorth hide in a ruin high in the hills? Hills.
Hills.
Anyway, on the south side of the area, quite possibly one of them is the protector of Delucius himself.
So
And
this
there's
guy.
a second shrine.
So the first one was in that little island in the middle of the lake, but they mentioned the giant iron hooks.
Yes, exactly.
So, like
Which
the
I
one
think
we
are-
almost tripped on because it was so big we couldn't
Yes,
see
exactly,
it. Like that
because we couldn't see it. Exactly. So, exactly. Oh, cool. Arjush has pasted in Delucius's dialogue while you're fighting him. Who dares
what
to
is-
call forth my kindred for banishment? Bah, you are more powerful than I thought, but no matter, I will not be defeated. When the second darkness comes, we will roam freely. Ah, that is
Oh,
interesting.
indicating he was awake at the first darkness, which might have been the first overtaken.
Well, no, I would think the second darkness would be the older darkness.
That's, yeah,
Like
guys,
Melkor's
maybe.
darkness, maybe.
Oh, that kind of dark. Oh, okay. So we're thinking that kind of nature spirit.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like he's a. It sounds like he's a. Well, that he's not a nature spirit.
No.
I think that he is an evil spirit, like an old like servant of, like one of the minor, servants of Melkor, one of the old ancient evil spirits.
Yeah, that would scan.
But yeah, so that the fishhook things would be basically connected with these sigils that we were talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep going. It's time.
Yeah.
We're running out of time. But
Man, how did they get seepage all the way up here?
Yeah. Let's keep, so that we don't have to trace our steps all the way up here again a second time.
Okay. Yep. Ooh, that's a sharp turn there.
Okay, yeah, it is.
Necromancer.
And where are we? We're coming out the south side.
Yeah.
Of Imlad Balcorth here.
Yep. You can still see the necropolis on our left. I put the romance in necromancer.
Now we're coming out into eastern Malinhad.
Yep. Welcome, Melonhead. And we get some orcs. Plain old, ordinary, non-supernatural orcs.
Okay.
Kind of refreshing after all that.
Great. Ah, yeah, we did miss the library, didn't we?
No. Yeah, we did. If I recall, it was really disappointing.
It was really disappointing. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we should probably stop here because it's getting late. I don't want to keep everybody up all night. All right. So we will return next week, and we're gonna, I think, go back. We'll probably go by Barad Gularon next time, and then work our way south to Malinhad. I think that's what we can do. All right. Very good. Thanks everybody for joining us, and I will see everybody next week. Thanks, Valari.
Good night.
Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.